Hello, and welcome to this episode of Moments in Credit Union History, sponsored by CUNA Mutual Group. Today, I'm pleased to welcome Brad Murphy to the show. Brad started his credit union career while he was still in high school, working in the supply department for the Kansas Credit Union League in Wichita, Kansas. After he graduated from college, he moved into the chairman of the National Youth Involvement Board. He was then hired by CUNA President Herb Wagner as a liaison between all state credit union league presidents and was named as the executive director of IAMD, and today that is known as ACUL. In the early 80s, Brad was hired as the CEO of the Georgia Credit Union League and Georgia Central Credit Union. After several years, Brad and his family returned to Madison, and he led the CUNA Service Group until his retirement. Today, we're pleased to welcome Brad to share his moment in credit union history. Specifically, he's here to talk about his role as chairman of the successful CUNA Save Our Share Drafts legislative campaign in 1979. Welcome, Brad.
Well, thank you very much, Stephanie, and thank you to America's Credit Union Museum for sponsoring this program. I think it's great.
Thank you.
As you mentioned, I've had an interesting career in credit unions, and one of the most interesting projects that I was involved in was the Save Our Share Drafts program way back in 1979. But before I talk about that, I have to talk a little bit about how share drafts got started. The actual first share drafts in America were started by the Kansas Credit Union League, who created an expanded check program. They bought a small country bank and set up a payable through operation that was later copied by CUNA, working with Chase Bank in New York City for a payable through of credit union share drafts nationwide. So by 1979, when the future of share drafts was threatened, there were already 1,650 credit unions offering share drafts to 1.4 million members. Now, these share drafts were offered under a business arrangement, not explicit authority in the federal law. And the program was sponsored by ICU Services Corporation, an affiliate of CUNA at that time. And the American Bankers Association, bankers generally, as you can imagine, didn't like the fact that credit unions were offering these interest-bearing, essentially checking accounts. We call them payable through drafts, because most banks at that time did not pay any interest and did charge substantial fees. So throughout the time that credit unions began offering this, which was essentially 1974 nationwide until early 1979, there was no legal challenge that was upheld. But finally, April 20th, 1979, a federal appeals court ruled that federal law did not explicitly authorize the offering of share drafts or payable through drafts, and therefore credit unions must cease and desist as of January 1 of 1980. As you can imagine, this was a major problem because credit unions were already offering these under an assumed authority. There was a regulation that had been issued by the National Credit Union Administration, and while they were very supportive, they had no choice but to uphold the ruling in the federal appeals court. The effort to appeal this to the U.S. Supreme Court was unsuccessful. The U.S. Supreme Court did not accept this. They indicated this was basically a legislative issue, and Congress had until January 1, 1980 to create this specific legislative authority. Well, I remember very well in April, we began talking about this within CUNA, and Jim Williams had just recently been named as the CUNA president. And I walked into Jim's office and said, Jim, we can fight this, but it's going to have to be a nationwide effort by every credit union, every league, and involving credit union members. And he said, okay, let's do it. And we put together a task force that included representation, obviously, from our governmental affairs division, from our public relations division, from our communications division, our research division, and more. And we notified credit unions on May 30th that there would be a major campaign that we called Save Our Share Drafts campaign. Save Our Share Drafts was abbreviated to SOS campaign. And all levels of the credit union movement were expected to participate, and stay tuned because they would be hearing more. We created an action plan, and this is a copy of that action plan within CUNA on exactly what would be done by whom and when, and began to put things in action. By June 12th, a letter was sent out by Jim Williams, CUNA president, to all credit unions, credit union managers, and leagues had already received this, and it included a packet. And here's a copy of the actual packet for the Save Our Share Drafts campaign. Let me just show you a few of the components in that packet. It included posters, Save Our Share Drafts. It included countertop cards. It included speech scripts. It included news releases. It included contact information for all members of Congress. It included sample letters to go out to credit union members. It included credit union resolutions. It included facts. I won't show you the rest of it, but a very extensive program was put together, and credit unions and leagues went into action. Throughout the next few months, we began seeing letters being sent to Congress saying, please save our share drafts. We had 2 different rallies on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., attended by hundreds of credit union members. Many of them were bussed in by their credit unions or the leagues in various states. We had resolutions presented from these credit unions and sent to members of Congress. I remember explicitly that our Governmental Affairs Division heard from a number of members of Congress saying, call off the dogs. We've had it. We've had enough. We hear the message. But it was very difficult for Congress to reach agreement on what this legislation would say, because the banks had a very powerful and economically powerful lobby, and they didn't like the fact that credit unions might get specific legislation. So the process within Congress went something like this. There was a bill introduced May 1, H.R. 3864, Consumer Checking Account Equity Act of 1979. President Carter at that time supported interest-bearing checking accounts, but of course Congress had to act first. Later, there was a Senate bill, S. 1332, legalizing credit and share drafts, introduced. That turned into S. 1347, Depository Institutions Deregulation Act of 1979. The first rally at the Capitol Mall included over 200 credit union members from Missouri, Virginia, DC, California, Connecticut, and Rhode Island on June 26. July 26, H.R. 3864 voted to delay until September 3rd, 1980. Too late, making share drafts illegal. Obviously, the bank lobby was hard at work. By September 20th, there was a second SOS rally with over 400 credit union members on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. October 15th is when the U.S. Supreme Court refused to act on the share draft issue. Finally, November 1, the Senate passed the H.R. 4986 bill, but NCUA at that point issued a new regulation requiring credit unions to phase out share drafts by the end of the year as ordered by the appeals court. So every league in the nation and most credit unions began urging for a conference committee within Congress. The Senate considered a 90-day authority for share drafts, H.R. 4998, to delay any decision. On December 26th of 1979, the National Credit Union Administration permitted credit unions to continue the share draft program because of the possibility of legislation. And on December 28th, President Carter finally signed H.R. 4998. Now that's going down to the wire. It was an amazing campaign, involved almost every credit union in the nation, many, many credit union members. It's been estimated that there were staff time of over 60 years spent on this at the national, the state, and the individual credit union level. So you can see credit unions can act as a single organization when the need is urgent.
It was clearly a wild ride for sure.
It was, and many credit unions that weren't even offering share drafts participated fully because they knew at some point in the future they would want transaction accounts. So a moment in history that leads to where we are today, which is with credit unions fully participating in the payment system. I would like.
It could have been a moment in history that would have changed the entire outcome of credit unions.
Exactly. Yeah. The credit union history is that every transaction, a person had to go into a branch office or the home office of a credit union, and that just wasn't going to work in our society that was quickly evolving to remote transactions.